was his stuff. Didn't get the job.
That's my favorite thing to do, actually. If you go to dinner with somebody, just like move things gradually so they don't notice, like a half inch at a time across the table until the end of it. Salt and pepper shakers and the napkin thing. And I'm classy.
Well, one thing I like about that idea is that you could.
Backpack Show.
Did it to myself.
Yourself for once.
To myself. I figured, that's a new one. No one's seen that one before. So the one thing I was going to say is that this episode not sponsored by Johnsonville Brats. Any one of these days, they could sponsor it. Really crazy excited today. This was Carrie's idea to put this together, but it's really funny how strangely organically it came together, because I've listened to John Bailey for 10 million years. Everyone in the world has listened to Susan Bennett for way longer. And it's interesting because our guest Monday were the Oral Knots, who happened to work with John and couldn't stop talking nicely about him. And so at this point, what are we going to do? We have authors like James Thorne showing up today. We have Scott Woodard, who's finally made it here. Hey, Coach. Good to see you, buddy. So it's going to be fun. So we're going to start with John Bailey, because he may have to get on the road. He may have to transform and roll out. There's nothing
that never gets old for him.
Who's if they recognize you, John, what character besides obviously the movie trailer voice, what character do they most absolutely have to have you play? Is it
I did not know the Dad Joker would be here today. Puns are the right of all innocent.
The question you've probably been asked a lot besides that question is, how do you go about figuring out how to make the voices? There's one bit that you can't help. It's just, working with various parts of your timbre and all that. But how do you start the difference between your Walter White and your Optimus Prime, for instance, to explain it technically to someone? How do you even bother? How do you do it?
I don't know the technical terms. I think it has something to do with the left phalange. And, I have tried to teach consummate professionals. I'm talking about the best of the best, people who have been at this 35 years. They're the most interesting voice actors in the world. And I don't know how to explain all the different parts of how it works. I can feel it inside, all the different parts that create the instrument of the voice, but I don't know what all those little pieces that I'm feeling are called and what they're doing to make that happen. I mean, I can just do it. And I've tried to teach the movie trailer voice to people that have been in this business for way longer than I have Emmy nominations. And anyways, I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I could write a book, I could retire from voiceover, just teach everybody else how to do it. I could just live off the books.
Really rich voice out there.
The way that some people can just play piano.
The best way I can try to sort of explain it is that a lot of people are familiar with the high falsetto voice. That's how a lot of people do, baby voices and squeaky voices and little. It's not your real voice. It's very high. There is a second falsetto in your lower range. A lot of people don't know how to access that. They get down as low as they can and they just kind of hit that bridge and they're stuck there. And that's as low as they can naturally go. But if you can get over that hump, you can go into a whole other territory. And people don't understand how to do it. And I don't know how to explain it. So.
But how do you approach it? Like when you're doing a voice as iconic as Optimus Prime, are you trying to make it sound like the way people expect it to sound? Or are you putting kind of...
It depends on the project. It depends on if I'm filling in for Optimus Prime or if I'm doing my own version of the character for something else. So it's usually up to the people in charge of the job. My job is to tell their story and make them happy and follow their directions as best as I possibly can. So if they say to do like this, regardless of my natural instincts, I mean, I haven't been to the point where I've been doing this character for 35 years and can say, no, this is how that voice should be done. I don't have that say. I'm just here. Like, you tell me what to do, I will do it. And then I'll take the other guy can take it from there. I know that's a totally normal common practice. ADR looping is a fairly, that's just how movies are done. They have temp voices come in, do the recording for the background and for the additional voices and all the walla, all that stuff. So they have that separate audio track. And sometimes those voices will either be final voices in the film or they will fill in for other voices that will be replaced later. For Bumblebee, for example, all the animation was already pretty much done. The animatic was done. The timing was already set for me to do. I had to say specific lines in a specific amount of time. I did like 3 really short sessions over a span of a couple of months, like 10, 15 minutes a piece. There wasn't a lot of dialogue to do. And then they edited up and chopped it up for the animatic. And I just happened to, out of completely coincidental, got a free screening and didn't know what movie it was. And it ended up being Bumblebee movie. In fact, we were the first audience to see it. And they had not finished the animation yet. The mouth didn't move, but it was still my voice, but it had been pretty heavily, cut together, which is my opinion was that I did some better takes than that, but that's the way they had me do it the way they wanted me to do it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then knowing, because this movie had the 10th of the budget of the previous Michael Bay movies, and the previous movies, there was a lot more Optimus. They didn't need an ADR guy because they had a massive budget. They could have Peter come in and do his own, and they had the mocap so he could match the face movements in the mouth. There were no mouth movements to catch this time. None of that stuff was required. This was the standard basic animated scene in a movie, and in an animated movie or an animated scene in a film. That's just how ADR is done. So guys like me come in, we fill in, and then we leave. It's like an understudy. We're a vocal stunt double. So.
How long have you been doing voices? Were you like the most annoying kid in school, or
no? I used voices to either impress people or to avoid getting beaten up by bullies, because if you could make them laugh and get them off, it's just sleight of hand is all it is. It's just like, oh hey, look at this thing over here that's not my face to punch, But yeah, I did my first voice when I was 4. And it was the funny thing was, it was out of competition because I was a very competitive kid, and my mom had tried to convince me that she could do Grover, and in my head I'm like, well, I bet I can do better than you can. So I did Grover first, and then that led to imitating Sesame Street voices in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and that's pretty much all we had. And then in the 80s I heard Peter Cullen's voice in Voltron first. He did the intro for it, just blew my mind. And then I heard him again in Transformers, and I was just like, I want to be that kind of voice one day. I want to be that voice that people go, whoa, that was freaking cool. I wished I could sound like that, something that was just an iconic, cool, symbolic kind of sound. And all the other impressions and stuff, I didn't really know that was a thing you could do to make money. That was more of a party trick and stuff that I did when I was in college and did for classes, whatever, stuff, sketches and skits for on stage. But like doing voices, I wasn't the most annoying kid in the world, but my teacher, my kindergarten teacher, who did keep in touch until I finally quit Facebook, she used to say, I remember you doing Transformer voices when you were like 6 years old in my class. So I've been doing it for a very long time. I've been practicing Transformers voices for 40 years now, almost, or 35 years now. So that's how long I started. I don't know how many years that is in general. I guess 37 years of voices.
How many real years is that?
It makes me so happy. I love that you've done those voices in actual movies. And what I love is like the Oral Knots have a video where Kylo Ren plays video games against Optimus Prime, and you voice Optimus Prime for that. Yep. And that's the one we quote in our house all the time.
The Spine song's the one I hear the most. I still get comments on other things where it's like, dude, you're the Spine song Optimus.
All the time. We say it. My kids will say it. They're walking around just going, spine, spine, spine.
I'm stepping with your spine. Yeah, I made that song up. They just gave me the words and I had to come up with the lyrics. And I was just like, okay, well, what would Optimus Prime would probably have kind of a Jack Black kind of way to sing. So I made sure to take some Jack Black, and just mixed in some Optimus Prime until, we're going to rock. In the end of time, there was written in the stone, and the legend of the Rent was way hardcore. I mean, that's basically where
Destiny stuff
came from.
That was funny because one of the questions I had on my list was, were you a nerd first and then a business guy? Clearly, you're nerd first. I'm
still not a business guy. I still like, hey, what's your rate? I don't know. Ask somebody who knows what the rate should be.
That was a question of mine because I was going to say, so the other thing the Oral Knot said when we had them on, Zach and Craven, was they said, you are so ridiculously professional. Like you were like, what do you need? Job. Okay, got it, done. Yeah, but I know, but everyone sort of expects, kind of jovial ho ho ho. And, everybody's like nerdy YouTubers in that way. But you were just like, okay, fine. Here it is. And they love you.
I'm fast. I would love to chit chat and be like, sometimes we do. Like when I have a free moment, they and I we've brainstormed some Batman stuff together that I don't know what they're going to do with it yet, but hopefully they will be able to come up with some funny stuff. Cause I thought it would be really funny to have Kevin Conroy's voice coming out of all the different Batman.
Oh
Some
my
days you just
God.
can't get rid of a bomb, like all like Adam West lines,
Adam West, right?
but Kevin, because Kevin Conroy they did that before I had the chance to get to it on Talking Tunes. They had
Okay.
him read lines from one of the movies, and I'd already had that idea, but I wanted to do it
Dang.
across all the Batman that we've ever
Right.
had, but with Kevin Conroy's voice. So they're working on something with that. I just don't know when or if they'll ever do anything with it. But most of the time, it's just like we've worked together before. I know their stuff gets good views. My job isn't just being a voice actor, although that's my primary career. I also do social media content, and I
Right.
play the social game. I do all my own stuff. So a lot of these guys that I know would help just kind of, and like I said, you guys are still talking about it. So it was a good decision to say yes to those guys in the first place. So that's why I'm just like, yeah, got it. I'll just record this as soon as I get a chance to send it back. Same thing with Annoying Orange or
Right.
trailers. Any of the guys that I work with where we're doing collaborations is a thing. But if it's somebody that I have not worked with yet and they're not a big collaborator, I just do it when I can get to it. People that I know have that better views or that I've worked with before, obviously they get, top pole position over other folks that I'd never seen or heard of before. But then you never know. Like Frank Caliendo just out of the blue started tagging me on stuff on TikTok. So
Wow.
you never know what kind of collabs are just going to happen and
What a nod
networking
that
and
is.
just like, well, yeah, somebody's like, can you do the epic movie voice? And I know he can because he did the 3 movie trailer voice video with the Don LaFontaine and Pablo Francisco back in the day. And he was
Wow.
tagging people. It's like, I do that voice fake. You should just listen to John. His voice is naturally a way. I was like, actually, it's not.
They think you talk like that all the time.
Yeah,
I know. They just say, that's the same thing Don said in an interview I've seen with him. He's like, I don't talk like this all the time. It'd be like going to the grocery store and saying, excuse me, do you know where the can of peas are? Like you don't talk like that 24/7, obviously. And he also mentioned to me and one other user, as far as like, he said, I can't do a really good Optimus Prime, but you should go check out Epic Voice Guy. I was like, well, that's pretty cool.
Wow.
You never know. Ryan Reynolds just freaking likes me for no good reason. Whatever.
I think it's very good
for
reasons.
good reasons.
Stop it.
John.
Well, I'm just saying there's a lot of fans out there that do the same kind of crap that I do. And he likes me for who knows why, out of all those other people he could like that are doing the same stuff. Maybe.
Well, there's a commentary a lot from
I'm not really sure what to do with my hands right now.
Is that a thing with voice actors? You have like a guitar pick?
I don't have a chair like you guys do. I'm standing the entire time.
That's right.
Well, that's
I got a lot of nervous
elocution,
energy
right?
for this job I got going.
Oh my God, impersonations. Who am I thinking of? Jay. Why am I not? Jay Farrow.
Jay Moore.
Jay Farrow says Jay Moore's good too. Jay Farrow said there's a big difference between people who can do impersonations and people who can inhabit the voice. So there's a big difference about.
I put it in more of layman's terms. It's basically the difference between a voice match and an impression. An impression is what comedians do, where it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be exaggerated, like the way Will Sasso does it. He's just he could do both. There's some people who can do impressions and they can do sound-alikes. A sound-alike voice match, same thing, potato. And it's like you take a voice and you exaggerate it. So when you go to the fairgrounds and you see the guy over there and he's painting pictures of somebody and they've got this massive, gigantic head and the glasses are way over. They're doing the same person, but they're elaborating that character to make it funny or entertaining, whatever. That's the same thing that impressionists do, because they may not have like Dana Carvey's a perfect example. He said this before. He's like, a lot of my impressions are not that good, but I make them, I create them and make them into characters and make them funny. And that's what a comedian does. Somebody that's a voice match artist that does sound-alikes, we're supposed to do it so good nobody even knows we ever did it in the first place. And
but you've done a lot of that, right? You've done a lot of.
I've been doing that for a long time. I didn't know that was even a job, to be honest. Like when I first started, I got into it through commercial stuff, like most people do. Did a little character stuff here and there. A few, when I first started, like we talked about before the show, a lot of people start off non-union, and I was filling in for people for things on Hasbro that they hired non-union voice actors for, as opposed to hiring union people for the shows, movies, and games. For commercials and stuff, they would get sound-alike. So I did Captain Rex from Clone Wars for several commercials and for some toy voices. I was Anakin's voice for a few toys. That's a really cool gig for me, but it was like, this big compared to some of the other gigs I've gotten along the way. And then I got into movie trailer voice stuff, but I never really knew about the voice matching thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And I first got my first opportunity. I take that back. There was one opportunity I've forgotten about. I filled in for The Rock. I think that may have been my first one. They needed somebody to change just a little tiny thing. So if you've ever seen a trailer and it's a red band trailer and it's completely uncensored, but then they show the green band and you can hear that some of the dialogue doesn't quite, because they had to censor that for the green band trailer. They used the T word in the Money Talks trailer, and in the green band trailer, he uses the word boobs instead. And somebody else had either I know I auditioned for, but I don't think I got it. But somebody or he himself did his own, re-recorded that line in his voice without that word and changed the word to something else. And this is one of those situations where it was like he said, God, not even God can save you from me. And they didn't want to put God's name in the trailer because apparently that violates the whole Green Band trailer thing. So they changed it to no one can save you from me. And I think that was my very first ADR line, was filling in for Dwayne Johnson going, no one can save you from me. And that was it. And it was just, it slipped it in and nobody even noticed it wasn't him. And then after that, my first manager put me in touch with my current manager, and she likes to try her talent out first before she decides whether she should sign or not. And she's like, can you send, it's out of the blue, because she got me on for trailer stuff, like promos, because that was kind of my thing. And she's like, can you do can you sound like Adam Sandler? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, so she sent me this audition, and it was for Hotel Transylvania. And I don't know why, but I sound just like a Jewish vampire grandma for some reason, blah, blah, blah. And I booked like 56 jobs for this one thing. And they're like, yeah, I think we should sign you. And apparently that kind of opened the door for tons of ADR. And I didn't even know what it was. I had to look up what ADR meant. And even that definition didn't help me, because the real definition is automated dialogue replacement or automated digital audio. And it was like, there's nothing automated or, I mean, it is audio and it is digital, but a better acronym would be audio dialogue replacement, I think, because that describes the job better. So anyway, that just released the floodgates. And then after that sometimes it's 15 times a day. And usually they don't give me much time either. And sometimes I don't even know who the actor is. They just give me a reference. I'll have to Google who it is. Oh, okay, I know. And sometimes I don't even know who they are. I'm like, I've never even seen this guy before.
You just
listen to the reference, play it back. Yeah, just listen, record it, listen back, do it again. I got 5, 10, 15 minutes to get it in, and then I ship it off. And then I never know. I just booked Bradley Cooper yesterday. Who knew?
Is that easier or harder if you know them? Like if you know their work?
I think it makes it easier if you're really familiar with them, because for me, it took this really big job that I did recently to kind of fine tune the list of voices that I say that I can do, because I think there's voices that I can do a little bit. And then there's voices I do really well. So this guy sent me this gig where I'm recording a short script in each emotion, but as that same voice. And I started realizing that made it so much harder, because then you're like, oh crap, I've only ever heard this guy sound like this. I don't know what they sound like, mad or disgusted or sad. So, but characters that I'm really good at, like I could be sad as Ryan Reynolds all day long. I can be super serious and dramatic, or I can be hilariously funny and just tell you that right now I'm not wearing any pants, no bottoms at all. You can't see because the camera's not pointed down. I'm going to point it. No, I'm not. I'm just kidding. I didn't wear my brand pants. But yeah, I can flip that switch because I'm so familiar with him and his work that I got a completely 360 degree round table of motions to play with. Other guys, I'm just like, oh crap. Because some people, you've only ever heard them be one way. You know what I mean?
Like
one
Liam
character,
Neeson?
one
yeah, they're
style,
pretty
mode.
one-dimensional. Okay, I'll give you an example. Keanu Reeves. What does Keanu Reeves sound like in doing any emotion? He sounds the same way as he always sounds when he does every emotion, which makes it very difficult to do. Because that could be sad, happy. I don't know. It all sounds the same to me.
Isn't that almost easier though?
It really isn't, because you're trying to perform as they would, but then you're like, crap, how would they?
That's how you would
do that, you know? So you just have to get really good. That's when the acting becomes more important than the sound alike, because they want somebody. And I heard this I heard this from the actual horse's mouth once. I was working on Detective Pikachu, and I'd done quite a few sessions for Ryan Reynolds. And they told the audio engineers, like, well, we did have like 1 or 2 other guys try to come in here, and they could sound kind of like him, but they couldn't act like him. And it's a combination of those two things. They had to be able to sound like them and act like them. And I heard from some very big names, I'm not going to say who, Michael Bay, that he's like, dude, he doesn't just sound like Ryan, really. He acts just like Ryan. It's like, you can't even tell. And I was like, that's a huge compliment. That means I did my job right.
Well, and I feel like you don't get it's very similar in my mind to the way Andy Serkis walks around all the time saying, stop calling it motion capture, start calling it performance capture, because this is I'm acting. I'm not.
I mean, they are capturing his motions, but it should be emotion capture would be a better.
I'm with you there. You know, I know we have to pull you out, and so,
I don't know. Emo cap kind of sounds depressed though.
Yeah.
First, we add an E to mocap.
I knew it was coming. I told you. See, they promised in Twitter they weren't going to do this. And yet here it is.
This thing with quotes.
Everyone knows they lie, people. All right, fake news. They promised they wouldn't do this. Now they're flip flopping around.
I promised an air quote.
What voice am I supposed to be?
Yeah, who do you want him to be here?
Oh, Optimus Prime.
He thrusts his fists against the posts and still insists he sees the ghosts.
I'm so happy.
Now, I know with all my heart that the number one thing that people must make you say at events has to be honest trailer voice guy saying boobs. Has to
No,
be.
you know, not as much as
It's
you
not
think.
boobs. Oh, I would
It's
think
not.
it'd be boobs.
Randomly every once in a while. That was a bigger thing back then. And
Okay.
then they became much more sensitive after the Me Too movement
Oh,
happened.
of course,
So
yeah.
they stopped writing that in there as much. They still throw some balls in there every once in a while. But again, for everybody who misunderstands, I do not make honest trailers. I didn't create honest trailers.
Just voice
I am just a voice actor who
They send
does
the
the
lines.
voice for honest trailers.
They send the lines.
How many freaking times have I got, hey, make this video? I'm like, well, you wouldn't go say, hey, Mark Hamill, make this Star Wars. Hey, Kevin Conroy, make this Batman. They don't make it. They're the voice.
Last question, and then I have to kick you out. Well, I have to ask the backpack question. The question before backpack question is this: you couldn't possibly have presumed that you'd end up at places like cons, hanging with those kinds of guys and getting some of the accolades that a Kevin Conroy or Mark Hamill get, because people know you from coming up through YouTube and all that. It must be so weird for you. But also edifying to get the adulation the way you do at events. I've seen fan videos of people swarming you at events, and it must have been a little surprising.
I must not have been at that event because I don't remember being swarmed before.
Oh, there's a great one. It is you should put it in your sizzle reel, I guess. I don't know.
It's surreal because I'm just exactly the same as everybody else. I'm just a normal, everyday, average guy. I'm a little Christian dork from South Haven, Mississippi. You know, like along the middle of nowhere, just south of Memphis, Tennessee. I was into the same stuff everybody else was, 80s cartoons. I just happened to be good at doing voices and never thought that was a real thing. I didn't know what a convention was until 2010 or so. And my first one was, what was it called? Mid-South Tennessee Con or something, MTAC.
Sounds massive.
Middle Tennessee Anime Con, I think that's what it was.
Oh,
and
sure.
I met Neil Kaplan was my the first person I met at a convention. We kind of connected over the internet and got a chance to talk in person. He was also the first Transformers voice actor that I got to meet. And yeah, it was surreal. And it was really weird because when I walked in there, I'm used to being the nerd and the awkward, the social. And then I walked in there and I had this weird sense of like, I bet I have the coolest job out of almost all the people in here. And I just like they are. I should be in a costume just geeking out over somebody. It was really weird for me. But accolades don't pay bills. Fame doesn't do squat for me. I appreciate it. I really am honored that people like my work. But until I can go to a paycheck with all my likes and take it to the bank and my likes will pay the rent, I'm just going to have to keep working for it. The main reason why I've stayed in this career is not only because I really enjoy it and I'm actually pretty good at it. It's mainly for the health benefits. We have an autistic kid. We have several other mental disorders, disabilities in our household, and it makes it very difficult at home. And without this job during quarantine at my old job with crap insurance or no insurance, our family wouldn't have survived. So this is all divine providence. And I could not be more grateful for the blessings that we've received. And give all the glory and praise up there because it has nothing to do with me. I mean, there's a lot of people that can do my job probably better than I could. And I'm just going where I'm guided, and I'm super grateful for it. But if you guys want to change likes and just start giving money, if you like me, I'm cool with that too.
He's got a
cameo for.
I can't go to Walmart and buy groceries with views, but if you want to PayPal me something,
sure.
Okay. All right, we're kicking you out in a minute. So listen, on the backpack, the whole idea is that you have the world's changing, everything's changing so fast. You only have a little bit of room in a backpack, right? But that's what you need to carry around on this shifting sand. I've added story, collaboration, autonomy. The word Manchu, which is an Okinawan word, it means one family, kind of the family you choose, and execution. John Bailey, what do we add to the backpack from you or take out that people need to bring back to the world and kind of thrive in the next 5 years?
So we're talking about non-physical things that you can't touch, I'm assuming.
Empathy, commitment.
Yeah,
what else?
I honestly, I think that sympathy is the one thing that we're all missing because we can't. That's the reason why we're going through such a difficult time right now, and why BLM and all these things are coming forward so hard right now because it's been put off so much and it's been ignored over and over and over again, and people just now starting to get, oh, I can put myself in I can see how people are being treated now because I can suddenly put myself in those shoes and realize this isn't right. And it's just like the light bulbs coming on for a lot of folks that just like, oh, that wasn't my problem. It's not anything to do with me. I'm innocent because I didn't have anything to do with it. Well, you're also innocent for you're not innocent because you haven't done anything too. So speaking up for other people because we can finally start to sympathize. That's just something that's very difficult to do. My son, is, like I mentioned, has autism. And the biggest problem we have is because he cannot understand how what he does makes the other person feel, and how he always is only interested in his wants and needs and how he puts himself before everybody else. And it's very difficult to explain that to him. And I feel like the world's just full of people right now who are only interested in their own needs, what they want, what they need, their own families, their own stuff. And they just can't feel bad for anybody else. They can't put themselves in. It's really difficult. You know, I have multiple children and I've been trying to teach them for years. Well, you may think this is horrible, but you weren't born in a country where you live on the street and you have to drink water off the road or take care of your whole family because your parents are dead and you're homeless. You know, there's way, way worse situations than ours. And when people can't put themselves in those shoes, they don't know how to be grateful for what they have.
No question. John Bailey, that's a big one. Carrie and I both have children with autism, so we know some of what you go through because we have our own experiences to pull
buckle
on.
up when they turn teenagers, let me tell you.
My little guy is 14 and a half, and I'm right there. So, yep.
John,
I hear it calms down in 8 more years. So.
Oh, God, any day, right? Any day. Our other guest today was the original voice of Siri. Would you ever consider doing something like that, John? Like where you're going to be on everyone's devices when they ask for directions?
I don't know. I don't know anybody wants to hear me giving them directions all day long.
Oh,
I mean, they want Optimus Prime to give them directions.
Well, I was gonna say there was a guy way back before I was, anybody knew, and he was trying to convince me to do voices for Garmin, which is the GPS thing. Right. And he said it would be really funny to have Christopher Walken tell people how to get to and from the places they go, and I could do that all day, no problem. You gotta turn left. You missed your turn. Come on, turn around. You're going the wrong way, and I was like, and then I looked at the size of the script and holy crap,
so much.
Who has that kind of time? I would love to be able to do something like the Darth Vader, voice or the Optimus Prime thing telling people, but eventually AI, you'll be able to just type in what you wanted to say.
Boot it out. John Bailey, thank you so much for being part of the show today. That was so cool.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.
So glad to have you on.
Thank you so much.
At Epic Voice Guy, and we've shared all his links so many million times. John's got to get on the highway. He's got to transform and roll out. So
I knew that was coming back.
Has to happen. It has to happen. Slightly different energy we're going to switch into. Almost a 90-degree segue when we bring in our new friend, Susan Bennett. Hello, first ever voice of Siri. How are you?
I'm giving you a different energy.
It was fun actually watching. So one of the things that live viewers don't get to see is that, our guests will private chat backstage. So you and John were private chatting as we were opening the show and stuff like that. It's really fun to watch. So
well, he and I are really sort of on opposite ends of the business, so
really?
in fact, I did my first game voice about 4 weeks ago. So I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping it will lead to other things. Of course, they wanted me to do a Siri-like voice.
Right.
It ends up being this character that takes over the world. So I said, I can do that.
Well, and you were in Aqua Teen Hunger Force's soundtrack. So, I mean, you've had some cool, nerdy street cred as well as Siri.
Yeah, but the weird thing is that many times, as with Siri, I didn't know that I was being used for that part. So as John was mentioning, many of the things, I absolutely love what I do. I am incredibly grateful. I give thanks every single day. And but the bottom line is that we have to make a living too. Right. And so, yeah, that was one of those weird things. I've been in the business for such a long time that when the type of work, IVR work, it's called interactive voice response. And that's all the characters that you hear, Siri, Alexa, Cortana, Google Voice, all these people came from these same types of recordings. And, those of us that were on the forefront didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. And suddenly it's like, I hear from people all the time, oh, did you know you're the voice of such and such? I was like, no.
No.
Yeah.
How did that happen with Siri? How did that come about? Because you're not under a non-disclosure, obviously. So did you know that that's what you were doing?
No.
And they just booked it through? No?
No.
Okay.
I've talked to all the other original Siri voices, except there are 4 original Siri voices. John Briggs in England, who was Daniel. That was the equivalent of Siri originally. And Karen Jacobson, who lives in New York, and she's the Australian voice. I've talked to both of them at length, and we all had the same experience, which was we started to do these crazy recordings in the early 2000s. I mean, my initial recording was in 2005, and I think Karen said hers was in 2003 or something. And we were sort of told that we were doing generic voices for phone systems. And the thing about being a freelancer in this business, especially as a woman, there just isn't as much work for women. And so you get a project like this that's going to be months long, you kind of go, oh yeah, I'm in. And also I was encouraged by a company that I still work with and do a lot of messaging work for. And so I just went ahead and did it. And then, wow, got a big surprise 6 years later when I'm Siri. Who knew?
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it weird listening to yourself, or did you immediately change that on your phone? Because I would probably would change it.
Oh no, I was so creeped out. I couldn't, I was used to hearing my voice on radio and TV commercials and things like that. But to have my voice coming out of this little computerized phone, it was like, ah! And I used to say, no, I talk to myself enough as it is. But the very first time I spoke to Siri, I just thought, well, I'll check this out, see what this is all about. I said, well, hi, Siri, what are you doing? And she said, I'm talking to you.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Well, so our friend Chloe just asked what it was like to hear it, but you just answered
the
that.
answer.
Well, what's funny about this is Chloe is Scottish, and if anyone knows anything, they know that Siri and Scottish people don't get along.
Right.
It turns out the Apple voice listening part of IVR has no idea what Scottish people are saying. Right. And so the reason I brought that up was to ask you this question. People get crazy when talking to IVR. When they talk to things like Siri, they get nuts when they don't get understood or when something doesn't matter, and they swear a lot at inanimate things. Do you have a feeling about that, just insofar as this was a gig you had, or is it just whatever, it's not related to you?
Well, it doesn't affect me personally, but I find it really amazing that we take so much for granted that they don't realize what went into creating this thing and how they just expect this little computer app, to just all of a sudden be able to, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be able to understand your language. I live in the South, and a friend of ours has a very, very thick Southern accent. He was trying to ask directions to a little town called Snellville. And he said, Siri, take me to Snellville. And she'd go, Snellville is, no, Snellville. And I said, Snellville. And then finally we got it. But the thing is that, boy, the technology is just, to me, of course, I'm not a very techie person, but the technology that went into this process that's called concatenation, the thing that they use to create the Siri voice, is absolutely astounding. It's just amazing.
So what does it do? Like, you're talking about concatenation. What is that?
Well,
is it like they change the tone or something of what you said? Or
what they do is the reason that the scripts, and the reason that John was probably right to look at that big clump of scripts and go, because it's very tedious. It's very hard on the vocal cords because it's all the same. It has to be almost monotone, totally, consistent in pitch, pacing, tone, all of that stuff. And so consequently, the very first recordings I did were 4 hours a day for 5 days a week for an entire month. And the scripts were written only for sound, not at all for content, because they were trying to get all of the sound combinations in the language. Because the process of concatenation is that computers and technicians would go into these recordings, extract sounds, reform them into new phrases and sentences, and those are what ended up on our devices. Now, from a voice actor's point of view, it was extremely tedious, and I was reading things that made absolutely no sense, such as militia oi hallucinate, bukra okra ooze. Say shist fresh issue again. Fossa, ask fussy. Cathexis, fepatully, sexual ease, stump. Things like that, you're just kind of, okay. And then you'd have these really repetitious things where they were just changing the vowel sound in a word. Like say the shrouding again, say the shrading again, say the shriding again, say the shreeding again, say the shredding again, say the shredding again.
So by comparison, this is actually very easy.
What, talking to you?
No, her little quote she has on the screen.
He thrusts his fist against the posts and still insists he sees the ghosts.
See, easy all day.
Oh yeah.
By the way, Dan just said that's his password, so you wrecked it.
Sorry.
No, so when you say that about saying it all the different ways, one thing that comes to mind. So I actually was an IVR engineer for a while in a wireless telecom.
Sorry.
So before I got to be who I was, and the one of the things that happened was a bunch of my Spanish speaking friends on the floor came to me and said the Spanish IVR was horrible. And this is like non-intelligent IVR. For English, press 1. Para Español, oprima dos. Nothing fancy. And what happened was the people who had recorded it were Miami Cubano Spanish speakers, and there are several types of Spanish. And it took, for instance, instead of saying press 2, whatever the word was that we had was more like twist the number 2.
Oh yeah.
Like they were kind of going for dial,
but
okay. They did twist. So anyway, just it's even just like interpretation and language. So your point about concatenation is that there's so much meat there. But one thing also, when you were saying that about having to come up with the different ways of saying it and all that, I live in Massachusetts now. We have all these names that we kind of ripped off from England that when written down look the same. So we have a town called Worcester, which is spelled Worcester.
Yeah. I'm from Massachusetts. I lived there for a long time.
So you get it. So you know the difference between Eastham and Chatham.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I used to have a guy call up directory assistants to validate. I worked at directory assistants for a while. He would validate these listings. So one time he comes in, he says, "In Worcester, please." And I said, and I knew him. I had heard his voice so many times. I said, "I'll just correct you just for entertainment. We call it Worcester." He goes, "Oh, thank you, in Worcester." And then he asked for his listing. I give him the listing. He says, "Okay, and then he looks down at the word and he goes, "In Duster?" And I said, "I'm so sorry. That one's Dorchester." I said, "That one's Dorchester." So that's why you had to do all those voices, I imagine.
Yeah, it's really, language is such an unusual thing, and it's why still, even with all of the technological advancements since the original Siri showed up in 2011, she's much more the voice flows a lot better than it used to. It's not quite as bumpy as with the original concatenation, that I'm going down there. And now it's still, even with as sophisticated as the digital assistants are now, sometimes they just won't get the right rhythm that we have as humans. They'll say, "I went to the store." And you're going, "Oh, really?"
Yay.
Yeah. So it's an interesting process. It's fascinating.
But has being the voice of Siri been good for your career, bad for your career, a mix?
It's really hard to say exactly. And it took me 2 whole years to reveal myself as the voice, because I was really concerned that once I did that, human beings always want to label things, and they want to typecast people and stereotype people. And I just thought, if I come out as Siri, they're going to go, it's going to be one of 2 things. "Oh, let's get her. She's Siri." And then it's, "Well, let's not get her. She's Siri." So it's like, I really wrestled with that for a long time. And my husband and my son were just relentless. And they said, "You are an idiot. This is such a unique opportunity. You've just got to jump on this." And so I finally did. One day the stars aligned and I decided to just go for it. And I'll have to say, it's just been an incredible experience. I did all kinds of fabulous TV, appearances and met all kinds of people. But I think probably the best thing that came out of it was, once it really embraced my inner Siri and started to do Siri speaker events. And I was encouraged to do that by Steve Wozniak, or Woz. You might know from Apple, Steve Jobs' partner, and the guy that actually built the computers. I met him at a tech conference, and he just said, Susan, you're just so easy on stage. He said, you really ought to do this. And I thought, maybe I will. So I can't, there are too many variables to say, well, it hurt my career or it helped my career. But I mean, try to choose the high road whenever I can. So I just look at it as a positive thing. I've certainly had experiences that I never would have had I not been the voice of Siri.
It does sound like you've had different kinds of opportunities since coming out as the voice of Siri than maybe you might have as a voice actor ordinarily.
Right.
Well, so let me ask you this, because here we are doing it again to you. The novelty of, holy cow, somebody that billions of people have listened to, if you think about that, which is the strangest number to think about. You know,
I don't.
you kind of can't really. But so it's so easy to get stuck on just talking about that part. But there's so much more to who you are, what you do, what you have to say. What do you most host people will bring you to a conference for after they get over the Siri-ness? What is the rest of Susan Bennett trying to say out there?
Wow. Well, I think, as John was saying, what I always try to do when I do my series presentations, it's in 3 parts. I talk, first of all, about how the recordings were done, where Siri came from, who she is, and how she ended up where she did. Then I talk a lot about the voiceover business, and I do a lot of different character voices to show people just the range of voiceover. Voiceover covers so many things. You're probably not going to get the same guy doing silly voices as you would reading medical terminology.
I don't know. I think John could do it.
There are so many, different aspects to the voiceover business. So I talk about that, and people enjoy that too. But the third part is talking about basically why it took me so long to reveal myself, the fear that I had to overcome. I really thought it was going to kind of end my career. And I was really troubled about that because I really love what I do. And so I talked about the fact that I just really had to come to grips with that. Being the age that I am, parenting was good. That's a good age. Yeah. But my parents were very, very cautious, overly protective, and sort of fearful, but they were people raised during the time of a major depression and 2 world wars. So, I mean, they were, it's a natural reaction to try to be overprotected. But, that's not the kind of thing that you're looking for if you're a performer. And I got into this whole business because I started off as a singer, and I was playing the piano at the age of 4 by ear. And so music has been the basis for all of this. And then voiceover just kind of fell into place.
You were in a heavy metal band, I think. Is that what?
Yeah, I look very heavy metal, don't I?
I had a question. Was there ever a legal issue with you using your own voice to record Siri-like recordings?
Well, no, Apple hasn't ever contacted me, which is probably good. I really go out of my way to say I'm the voice of Siri and not that I am Siri.
Right.
But basically, they're like any giant corporation. The only time that they're going to get upset about anything is if it involves a lot of money. And at this point in time, that is not the case. So
fear can stop us from taking great opportunities, talking from experience.
Yeah.
That you pushed through.
Yes. I've had to live. I've lived with fear my whole life. And so I look back on my, one of the things you talk about, Chris, about what you wanted to get through on your show is, what tools do you need, or what do you suggest that you do to reach success? And my thing is, well, what do you consider success? What are you looking for as success in your life? Are you looking for a ton of money? I can't really tell you how to do that. Because everything that I've ever done is sort of instinctual. And I just, I've always tried to do the right thing and to be a decent person. And I think that we're really losing sight of that in our culture right now. And everybody's, the hate that's floating around right now is just frightening.
Toxic.
Speaking of fear. But yeah, basically, if you really can just kind of close your eyes and just do that thing you're afraid of. And
how do you get to there, Susan? How do you've experienced it, and everyone every day. Like if the next opportunity you have to try to do something next, besides speaking gigs, kind of now while we're all sort of cobbling our work together, you probably still feel fear. I don't know if I'm really qualified for this. It's the same thing you think, even with your, extensive career. What do you say to yourself? How do you coach Susan Bennett into the next action?
Well, basically, I try to distract my overthinking brain, because I really do overthink things. And I'll tell you that I think that that's one of the bad things coming out of this isolation, is that I know for me that, I'm not working at the same pace that I was before. And of course, all my Siri speaker events have been canceled for a while. And so consequently, I'm having to learn to deal with a slower pace of life. But for me, 4 planets in Leo, I can get very lethargic and want to just turn into a big cat and just sleep. So
like all of us.
And not doing that, if you're trying to get your career going, do not do that.
Although right now, I think everybody is a little bit like that.
Yeah, well, because everything is just so up in the air. We have no idea what's going on. We can't, every day is a question mark. And so I think what you have to do then is find some sort of belief system for yourself, whatever you believe, and recently, my agent, Wes Stevens at Vox, great guy, and he's been putting different pages of the Tao Te Ching on Facebook every day. And you read some of that stuff, and you go, oh yeah, I really do need to get out of this material and just try to get into think about the bigger picture. And I think you really do have to talk to yourself, and you have to coach yourself sometimes, because we do get overwhelmed. And especially with as many people as are on the planet now, people trying to do voiceover work. I mean, there's so much competition. It's really daunting. And so what has happened with technology, is that now the onus is totally on the talent. We have to do everything. We have to market ourselves. We have to keep up with social media. We have to be the talent. We have to be the director. Oftentimes we have to be the engineer. And it's all of a sudden, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. But it's kind of what you have to do now.
Susan, handsome Andre Palmer has stopped by from Twitter/Periscope and asked the question, do you get voiceover work through word of mouth, or do you actively market yourself? My guess is that answer's changed a little as time has gone on.
It has. And that's one of the things that I'm not very good at. I am not a very good self-promoter. I have relied for many, many years on agents, and that's still what I do. I think that a lot of people who are working now, a lot of it's gone non-union, which I try not to do. I just, loyal union member here. And I think that basically if you want to get a lot of work, you have to do tons of auditions. And you have to probably do something to make yourself stand out, only the individual person is going to know what that could possibly be. But, you really do have to get yourself out there. I mean, it sounds like John is just a genius marketer and utilizing YouTube and all that stuff and social media. That is not really my wheelhouse, as they say. So I just, some of it's word of mouth, but a lot of it is just through my agency.
It's interesting, really, that crossover experience of classic methods, the sort of things that when you were starting, and even from back in your music career and all that, to now, where anyone at least has the equipment to get out there and kind of make the connection. They have to develop their talent. They have to do all the work that they probably don't remember to do because they have all the equipment sometimes. It's interesting that where you kind of what you have in spades as far as, your skill, your talent, your hard work, your drive, and your determination gets pushed against by the fact that you now have to be your own self-promoter. You now have to choose to, start an Instagram page and all these other things that you really don't want to do when you're thinking it would be great to take cat naps all day.
Right. It just depends really much how much you want it. And each decade, each different period of time has its, the necessary things that you need to do. In the past, you had to get a good agent. You just had to get on with a good agent. Now you just have to get out there. But I do tell people that write in and ask me for voiceover advice. There are still some things that are universal and that you will always need to have, namely, you have to be able to read. I mean, you've got to be able to pick up a piece of copy and read it cold. And so I always tell people to pick up a newspaper or a magazine, because those things are not written to be read aloud. So they're really hard to read. You have to figure out where to take your breath and how to make the sentence fit together. So there are just certain skills that you have to have. You have to be able to read. And for most voiceover work, unless you're just going to be a strict announcer, you have to be able to act. And so I always advise people to take improv classes, get into doing some acting, and like feel freer in your body so that it'll affect your voice too. Of course, then there's all the stuff of just taking care of your vocal cords and taking care of your health. How
much of that stuff do you do? Like, do you actually gargle salt water, or like, what do you do?
I do. That's a lifesaver for me, because I live in very humid Atlanta, and I've had trouble with allergies all my life, and so there are extra little tricks that I have to do. But, mainly it's just, it's a lot of stuff that's pretty self-explanatory, just, basically taking care of your health, not overdoing, don't smoke cigarettes and stuff. So
are there strange things you have to avoid, like certain foods that trigger you to sound worse, or like, clear your throat or something undesirable like that?
Yeah, I had a point in my life, actually right when Siri came out, it was in 2011, and I was really having a lot of trouble with my voice. So I went to see this sort of out of the box allergist guy, and he tested me, and it turns out I had all these food intolerances that I had no clue that was happening. And I stopped eating certain foods, and I totally cleaned the house, and got rid of dust and mold and all that stuff, totally revamped the HVAC system, and suddenly boing, came back to life. So everything is interacting. And so, to have a healthy voice, you need to have a healthy body in general.
Was one of them corn, Susan?
Corn, no.
Son of a. I'm under this impression I may possibly be allergic to corn, and I've only recently decided this on my own without any medical.
Let's say sensitive, because if you were allergic by now with the prevalence of corn syrup, you would be sensitive, not here.
Corn sensitive.
And the thing that's weird is that they change too. What happens sometimes is if you have a particular food that you really like and you eat a lot of it, sometimes that does create a sensitivity.
So much irony in that too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You get allergic to your favorite thing.
I'm allergic to myself.
It's a good thing our viewers aren't allergic to corn, or they couldn't listen to your jokes.
I'm making you a yellow card. That's what I've learned at this episode. Susan, I almost said Siri. How bad is that? Oh,
it's Susan. All right. It's all right. My investment guy calls me Siri. It's okay.
Just don't ask her how to hide a body, or like ask for directions or anything.
Oh, she'll tell you.
Someone must have kind of pulled this together at least once in digital or personal format. Have you and Cortana and Alexa and everybody shared a stage at some point?
No. Really? But I have a movie producer friend who really wants to put something together, and she's talking about having all the original voices in the same room, which would be interesting. It would be
fun, such as it were. And poor Cortana in that regards. I mean,
Cortana.
Video game players know, but that's it.
She's like the least known Kardashian. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. She, Cortana is it's not a name that you remember.
Right. Well, except idiot video gamers who played Halo starting in like early 2000. Cortana was Halo's artificial intelligence in the video game.
Oh, and she's not a gamer, so I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And she's like ridiculously like video game attractive, appealing to young prepubescent male boys and whatever, and male boys.
Mm-hmm.
And
not going to work. It's like trying to make fetch happen. Like no one's going to go search for Bing, like on Bing instead of Google. Like, it's not going to happen.
Stole her name for branding purposes, and 0 people love her. Anyway, that was just a weird sidebar when I thought of that.
Yeah. It's funny. Things will just click and other things just go away. What was the first thing? MySpace? Where'd that go?
Right.
MySpace?
We were talking about this with John, was like the different apps that you have to be on, that you have to be present on, like as a voice actor to sort of market yourself. They come and go like that. I mean, it is crazy. You'll be on one and then it's like no one's there anymore. You're on to the next thing. So
well, you have to remember that I've been doing this for decades and decades and decades. And at this point in my life, my husband is a fabulous musician and we just kind of play music. You know, I just don't, I don't chase after it. And I was so, let me find some wood. Oh, this all. I was so fortunate. I've been so lucky that sometimes I think that maybe this was a destiny of mine to become this thing, because so many things just fell into place, just serendipitous things. I was watching some, Elton John documentary, and he was talking about, they said, well, how did you meet Bernie Taupin, you know, his lyricist? And Elton writes the music, but he can't write lyrics. And he was in some conference or something, and they were just arbitrarily getting, you know, put together with other people. And he just happened to be put together with Bernie Taupin, and it clicked. And you kind of look at it and go, well, was this meant to be, or what is this, you know? And so I feel very fortunate. I have been lucky enough to sort of fall into a lot of things. I fell into the voiceover thing because I used to be a jingle singer. And one day I'd done some jingle singing, and the voice actor didn't show up to read the copy of the spot. It was for a commercial. And the owner of the studio said, Susan, you don't have an accent. Come over here and read this copy. And so I went, oh, ding, 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 I can do this. And so I got voice coaching, took some, you know, lessons, some acting lessons, and started to work.
Get rid of that Massachusetts accent.
Oh, listen, I was very fortunate. I got rid of that very early in my life. I had a very thick accent because I was born in Vermont, lived in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, had this very thick New England accent. And then my family moved to upstate New York, where it's a much flatter, more neutral accent. So I lost that thick one. And then as time went on, and of course, I've lived in Atlanta for many, many, many years. And so I've really tried hard to fight.
Not to pick it up.
That Southern thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up with a Harvard dad and a mom that sounds like she came right out of the movie The Town with Ben Affleck. It was a really strange mix.
Well, I love to hear people try to do that New England accent. And
it's painful.
Unless you're from there, you really can't get it. Diane Lane can do it.
Right.
Amy Ryan can do it.
Amy Ryan can do it.
Amy Ryan can really do it. I don't know if she's from there, but she's really good at it.
Robin Williams could not.
No,
Robin Williams failed.
I thought that was kind of unfair that he won the Oscar
after screwing up the accent.
With the accent. It's sort of like, if you can't do it, just don't do it. Nobody's going to question you. They'll go, oh, well, that he was an educated guy that cared a lot about language, so he did the accent. But you know, sometimes and whenever he did it, it was wrong.
Hey, look, we're all from there, and we don't talk like that.
Where are you from?
So it makes sense. But I was thinking at the time that maybe it was really bad, and it kind of took me out of the movie, actually, and does so every time. But even people who are from here and move somewhere else and purposely lose the accent, they can't always reclaim it.
Right. Oh, it's
really hard.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh, no. Three beers or talking to anyone in the working class, I get it right back. And I was from Maine, so I was born and raised in Maine, where like Vermont, kind of, you get that nasal accent, you know, so you talk kind of through your nose a little bit. And then no R's were to be found anywhere. And then I moved to Massachusetts, and there are even fewer R's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, they put R's where no R's should be.
Right.
Like, I have an idea.
Yeah.
You order a tuner on a Peter at the sub shop.
So all kinds of wrong.
Yeah.
So listen, we have one more official real question from a real person.
Okay.
Lasha asked the question, can you train your voice around some vocal cord damage? Do you know anything about that?
Wow. Oh, wow. I'm betting you can. But that's not something that I could really advise on. That's something you'd have to talk to, really a voice specialist. And depending on the amount of damage, I think.
Maybe do certain voices and not others that are too high or too low or something.
A lot of it has to do with you have to be careful with your voice, and you have to learn how to use your diaphragm as opposed to just doing all your voice work from here. Because, I'll tell you what, if you get those nodes on your vocal cords, you could really lose your voice or completely and utterly change the sound of your voice.
I heard that Nina Simone ruined her voice singing Mississippi, goddamn.
Oh,
that you can get so into it emotionally that she just pushed your voice past its
well,
limit.
I don't know the lead singer's name, but AC/DC, that guy, I can't listen to it because it just sounds like he's taking a cheese grater to his vocal cord. I go, how could he do this year after year?
Brian Johnson, yeah, he I saw those guys. It was interestingly enough, I saw them at the Garden, at the Boston Garden, the last real Boston Garden before they took it down and it became several other buildings. And
worth whatever.
Yeah,
it was quite interesting about that performance is that all of the gentlemen in that band are of a certain age, and they most certainly have the exuberance of people at least in their earliest 30s. Yeah. So we have to kick you out. So Susan Bennett, one of the things we ask a lot of people. Oh, well, okay. By the way, there's an old Johnny Carson where Steve Martin is on it. This talk about aging out a whole bunch of people paying attention. Steve Martin's on it, and Steve says, I noticed that a lot of your guests kind of have to run, and they have some kind of a very busy life where they got to leave the couch or something like that. And Steve goes, so I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to leave early. And Johnny's like, well, okay, Steve. And I can do no impressions. I'm no John Bailey. And so Steve makes a big thing of it. He comes in as he's shaking Johnny's hair, and you can kind of hear the hot mic. He says, I've really got to leave early, And Johnny's like, yeah, you said, Steve. And so Steve does his little moments on the couch. And then he just says, listen, I got to go. And Johnny kind of oh, right. Steve said he has to leave a little early. Sorry about that, whatever. Hey, Steve Martin, everybody. And the music and the fanfare play. He walks out off the stage. He goes kind of behind the curtain and just a beat or two go. And then he comes back out of the curtain. He goes, I have to tell you something. I was lying. I don't have anywhere
to be.
I love him. He's so great.
Yeah. I love when they asked him what his real name was, and he was like Gern Blanston.
Oh, yeah. Well, you guys are too young to know Steve Martin. Look him up because his special.
Ask your parents.
He's really
great musician, by the way. Incredible banjo player. Yes. No. Well, I mean, the best George, what's his face, was a great. Never mind. This conversation is going in a whole different direction. But I was going to say that one of the things I love about the Irish exit